So, our next topic is the whole Gaza-Israel hostage deal slash ceasefire. So, it sounds like 3 Israeli women were released from captivity in Gaza on Sunday. And I think how many? I think it was like 90 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a really generous exchange rate that Israel gave them. Like, for every woman, will give you a bunch of men.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it was extremely lopsided. I mean, I guess that's you have to make tons of concessions when you're dealing with like evil terrorists. But according to the New York Times, quote, further exchanges will likely follow a similar formula, with tens of Palestinians freed from prisons in Israel for each hostage held in the Gaza Strip by militants. Over the 6-week first phase of the truce, Hamas is expected to release 33 captives, and Israel is slated to free about 1,900 Palestinians. So, yeah.
So, really about this is the same deal. This is like almost the exact same deal that was issued back in May. Because, I mean, the only thing basically different about this now is that there's a bunch of clarifications, effectively, so that Israel can't just, so that the Netanyahu government can't just break some rule or say Hamas broke some rule and then start the conflict up again. Because part of this is a huge story about Netanyahu's political survival. And his allies inside of the Likud party have really, many of them turned against him for the way that he's handled this. And he has, like, of course, there's extreme internal strife in Israel with people protesting against Netanyahu, against these, not even like that bad acts in Gaza or things that have happened, just Netanyahu kind of giving up on the hostages, which he 100% certainly has. And then there's the pressure from internally in terms of people electing him again, and then him therefore trying to delay elections. And then there's also, of course, his allies inside of the Likud party who are more radically to the right, trying to create settlements inside of Gaza. And if he does that, there'll be more pressure on him from the international community. And the United States can't, of course, control everything about the international community. So there's a story there, and then it's really just a big calculation by Netanyahu of how he's going to survive, because of course everybody knows Netanyahu is an amazing political survivor, and he'll probably survive this too. I'm sure many of the people listening can recall back to October 8th of 2023, Netanyahu's approval rating basically plummeted. There were people like, I remember seeing a video or listening to an audio of some guy in a hospital in Israel, and he was like cursing at the security camera. There was his dead family member there, like, "Curse you, Netanyahu." I'm kind of paraphrasing, but "Curse you, Netanyahu, this is your fault." And I mean, it sort of is. Netanyahu really is supposed to be this heavy security guy, Mr. Security. He's the reason why, if you go to a mall in Israel, you have to be patted down for explosives. He's the reason why the borders are so secure there. And so when you have such a huge thing like this break out, it does go against you like that. It goes against that narrative in an extremely strong way. So you, of course, have that. His approval rating has kind of gone up a little bit, but there's definitely still some doubts as to if elections are finally held after so long of him delaying them, whether he actually will win. I think he likely will because of him ending it, but I mean, it's just Netanyahu trying to calculate what he can do to survive. Because it's the exact same deal, is really what I want to say. It's the exact same deal. It could have happened a while ago if Israel didn't keep poisoning the agreements effectively, but yeah, what would you say on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and meanwhile, Hamas is getting exactly what it wants. The pressure is building from the international community and within Israel. The pressure's on Netanyahu and all that. Meanwhile, all this, Hamas is just surviving, I guess. Like, this is pretty much everything's going exactly according to the plan. They're taking to the streets, shooting weapons in the air, celebrating all of this. Because, yeah, this is exactly what Hamas wanted. This is exactly how Hamas survives this war. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, there's nothing, yeah.
So, another part of this has, of course, been whether this was Biden or Trump, and I'll come out and say it was obviously Trump. And I want to say, look, I don't agree with most of Trump's policies. I've said this before. I don't think he was a good president from 2017 to 2021, and I think he's the reason COVID was so bad. I didn't support him in 2024, even though I cannot vote. But I definitely give him credit for this. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of optimism through 2025 to 2029 regarding the Palestinian the Palestinian cause and a two-state solution. I don't think there's going to be a lot of good news on that front, but this is definitely some good news, and I 100% give him credit for that. I think that this is definitely of his own making, and it really shows how pathetic Joe Biden's foreign policy really was, because I remember I would always talk to people, and I would say, all Biden has to do is hold off this shipment of weapons, and all he has to do is put pressure on Netanyahu, and people would always say, Netanyahu is his own man, and you can't decide what he does, and apparently he really does have to do what the United States wants, and even though there's definitely threats from China, and people are having doubt about our future power in international politics, we definitely still do have much control over what happens in Israel and what happens on that front. Because this is very evidently a reason why. Donald Trump isn't even in office yet, and he didn't... look, I'll say there's a 0% chance. I don't think Donald Trump would really ever withhold serious arms to Israel. And even with that, he's still pressured. He said he said he's the most pro-Israel president in American history. And yet he's still forced Netanyahu to his knees to accept this deal. Because, let's be honest, this is 100%. The only reason why this hasn't happened for so long is because of Israel. Israel is the reason why this deal hasn't gone through. And Biden has been completely unable to execute this. And that'll be what Biden is remembered for. Of course, I've said this before. Biden will be remembered for the economy, whether it was his fault or not, which part of it is his fault, part of it definitely isn't, and it's price gouging by corporations, and his garbage foreign policy. If you want to make Zelensky do what you want and surrender to Russia and secede much of the territory that was gained post-February 2022, you obviously can. And of course there's Russia in that equation, which isn't the same as Israel, but definitely still something to think about. If you want to make Israel stop attacking Gaza and agree to these agreements and stop poison pilling all of the things that have been set to happen, you can do that. So, it's a really telltale thing. Joe Biden will not be remembered for his labor policy or his antitrust or Lena Khan or any of this industrialist policy, any of this stuff, which actually was good. There were some things that were good about the Joe Biden presidency. I think that, for an example, I think he did a good job on many parts of COVID. I think that he did do some things which were unconstitutional, but some of the things that he did really did help America come back from that horrible pandemic. And he will not be remembered for that. And because of his cowardice and because of his lack of sentience, he will not be able to, because of that, he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do foreign policy-wise. There were so many times I would hear, back in February, March, April, him having a phone call with Netanyahu, and apparently they were talking, and there were really strict things being said, and obviously it was all a lie, because this was an extremely easy deal for Israel to get past. So, yeah.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, will Hamas release all of the hostages? Because, Hamas, I guess, they don't really have any incentives to release the hostages, because when you think about it, it's really the only leverage they have over Israel. So, like, does Hamas really want peace? Like, if they did, then they wouldn't have done, obviously, October 7th. Like, what will be... Will they release them? Will they not? Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see what will
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. Hamas, since the negotiating has begun, basically Hamas has been the people who wanted peace, and Israel have been the people, or should I say more, Netanyahu has been the person who didn't want peace, because, of course, Hamas offered to release all of the hostages that it took on October 7th in exchange for Israel not conducting even a ground invasion, not even promising not to strike in the air with missiles. So, like, many people have said this defense of Israel, just give back our hostages now. To give back our hostages. You want peace? What about give back our hostages? Hamas has wanted to give back their hostages, and they've said repeatedly that they would give back the hostages if Israel just stopped attacking them. So it's like the only reason that the hostages never came back is because of Netanyahu. And Israel has basically, if you know, many of the hostage families have been outwardly against Israel's response to October 7th because of how unsuccessful they've been in the aim of getting their family members back. And there were many people, when Netanyahu came to the United States in July and spoke to Congress, who were very outwardly against him. And he basically just told them to shut up. And many of the hostage families have just been basically ignored now by Israel because they have been outwardly speaking out against the Israeli government in their response to October 7th. So another thing that I'll say is that it'll be really interesting to see in 100 years or even 50 years, in 200 years, how this conflict is remembered, because I would say, look, I don't agree with Israel's response to October 7th, obviously, but I'm not going to say that I'm objectively right, but I would say it's sort of like if you were living in Nazi Germany as a German and you were 20 years old, growing up and being 80 and seeing how the world sees you then. So it'll be really interesting to see how the United States is remembered in this conflict. And I think that we will be remembered as the villains, in my opinion. Along with, I'm not justifying Hamas, of course. Hamas are terrorists, they're bad people, and I don't think that Hamas are just these innocent angels who October 7th was not justified, and, their acts have been horrible and horrific and not really tied to the best interests even of the people of Palestine, or especially the people of Gaza. But I think we'll be remembered as the villains. I think Hamas will be remembered as another villain. I think that Israel will be remembered as a primary villain. What do you think? Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess for my final thoughts, I'll just say it's certainly a tough spot if you're Netanyahu at the start, because Israel has two goals. One, releasing the hostages, which, again, you're right, Hamas was willing to give them back at the beginning. But also, they wanted to win the war against Hamas and stop Hamas from doing things like this again. So, it's tough because, of course, Hamas, as soon as they committed these acts, are just going to want to, here's all the hostages back, and let's just forget about this whole thing. But, I guess it was tough for Israel in the beginning, because, with the two goals that they had. But, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, so if you look at videos of the streets of Gaza, and I think I saw a video of a car with the hostages being held by Hamas driving out of Gaza and going into Israel, you can see so many members of Hamas. And I think it's a crazy video, and that it provides so much. I should have put it in here. Maybe I'll post it on Twitter, repost it on Twitter. But much of the story here, you can see in the background all of the destroyed buildings, all of the rubble, all of the carnage that has ensued, and then there's so many Hamas members. And I think that that's the most important undertone of this entire conflict, and the most important thing to understand. Israel has successfully destroyed everything in Gaza except for Hamas. There are literally hundreds of Hamas members in the streets, like proudly wearing their headband, and they're everywhere. And it's obvious. Israel has very, very obviously completely failed in their military endeavors in the Gaza Strip. They have not been able to accomplish anything which they originally set out to do, which by that clip is very obvious. The main thing that Israel tried to do, I think, is just to cause so much harm to the civilian population that they ended up turning against Hamas and siding with Israel, which obviously didn't work. Hamas's recruitment numbers are skyrocketing. Hamas has an all-time high approval rating, despite them being one of the main reasons that this conflict is still being propagated, or was still being propagated, if it is to settle down past this point, like it actually did in the south of Lebanon. So, yeah, I'm super glad that it's over. Thank you, Donald Trump. It's a great thing that Donald Trump did. Maybe you should ban TikTok as well and not save TikTok. But yeah, honestly, congrats to Donald Trump. Thank you for doing that. That's a great thing that he did. I will defend him on that. It's 100% him. It wasn't Biden. And that's one thing that he didn't lie about, I guess. He did serve that promise well. So yeah, the official ceasefire I think lasts 42 days, but we'll be able to see how long it lasts if Netanyahu decides that he wants to start it back up again. He likely can, but yeah, that's all I really have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One final thing before we go, I just want to say I don't think Israel ever wanted to have the Palestinians be on their side. I mean, it's really tough when you have, because so much of the Palestinians' culture aligns with Hamas. There's a reason why they put them into power, all of the religious ties and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really think Israel wanted all the Palestinians to be on their side. But yeah.
Yeah, alright. So, of course, I'll be releasing a video tomorrow with my reaction to Trump's inaugural address and him becoming president. And maybe, could I call you in? Would I be able to maybe call you on Zoom? Alright, so maybe we'll be able to get some of Collin's thoughts too. Obviously, the 19th of January, post-election year, a very influential day. This is the last day of Joe Biden's presidency, and his legacy will be defined. I'm also thinking about doing a president's tier list now that we can actually rate Joe Biden after his term has finally ended after a very tenuous 4 years. But yeah, that'll be all that I have to say, and have a good day.
Yep.